Hello and welcome to the next episode of our Let's Keep the Conversation Going series. I'm delighted to be joined today by Sarah Hartwell, who is National Account Manager at lender PropertyCircle. Sarah is certainly an experienced financial services professional and is someone who's operated in the mortgage sector for over 20 years. During this time, Sarah has worked for some of the largest mainstream and also some specialist lenders in the UK. And today, Sarah will be discussing some of the challenges faced and share why and exactly why mental health and well-being is so important to her. Sarah has some excellent coping mechanisms and ways of dealing with stress and anxiety, and combines obviously a busy work life with being a mum. And I'm sure there's going to be some great hints and tips as we go through the next 30 minutes or so. But morning, Sarah, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you, Jason?
I'm good, thank you. Listen, thanks for joining us today. I'm really delighted. And I know the subject and the topic of mental health and wellbeing, I know it's so important to you. And I know all our guests who get involved with this conversation, there's always a bit of a backstory. But the starting point for all these conversations, Sarah, is really just a bit of a whistle-stop tour of that career. So I know I said it was over 20 years that you've been involved, and I think it goes as far back to Countrywide when you first started out. But what's that career been over the last 20 years or so?
Oh, yeah, I thought you were actually going to ask me how long it was. I am going to give you a real whistle tour because we could be here all day because I've been around for a long time. But like everyone, I ended up in financial services by accident back in Stroud and Swindon Building Society, actually. For 7 years, then Countrywide. And then I got my first chance at being a BDM in 2003 for Northern Rock. And then it really started from there, and working as a BDM, and then with Vida as a corporate sales manager, and then lastly completely coming out of the corporate world and working for Mark Randall entrepreneur new startup company. So I've been placed quite a few places, so I know the industry quite well. So and it's been a very enjoyable career as well. So yes,
It's a brilliant sector to work in, isn't it? Although, again, mental health and well-being, we're shining a light on that. But it's a resilient sector, isn't it? Though these brokers who we serve and support, they go through lots of bumps, and there's no perfect pathway to get a mortgage. But it's a very resilient sector. Have you found that? And I suppose what kind of focus do you play on having some resilience?
yeah, me myself and we work in financial services, so we're very much talking about financial services in the industry. But I'm sure these conversations are going on, whether it's the oil business or anything. And I think life's changed very much, and I think it's harder for everybody. And we're all different personalities, and it comes into how we cope as well. Everyone copes really differently. Some people have the ability to shelf it, but some people, they fall apart. But at the end of the day, everyone has to deal with it, and there are going to be consequences how it affects your life, really, I think.
How have you managed? I said that you're a working mum, and how have you managed to combine that professional life with that family life?
Oh, it's been really difficult. I am a mum to an adopted child. Being a mum in itself is really hard, but being a mum to an adopted child who's been in care and comes with trauma is really hard. And I haven't coped very well, really, hence why I changed out of the corporate world and now only work 3 days a week because it just wasn't doable. So you have to make a decision, and I think I would have liked to stay doing what I was able to do, but Mercy got really bullied at school when she went into year 7. And I had to pick her up and take her, so I just could not do a job. And I don't like the word career driven. I get a lot out for myself out of working, so it was a really hard decision. But I think that's something that when you're talking about this is we really have to know our own limitations. and ask for help. I think that's a really, really big one, is asking for help.
It's a really good point, that, and again, we see people suffer in silence, and we encourage conversation, and it's keep the conversation going. Strapline is really important to us. But we've got in December and January, we've got an initiative which is all about self-care and how can we serve the needs and look after the needs of others if we don't look after ourselves first. So it sounds like what you've done there, you've had to make a judgment call based on
a lifestyle. I mean, I probably cut my salary less than half. But at the end of the day, you have to do what's right for you, and you have to do what's right for your child, because if the tank is only half full, you're no good to that child either in that situation. And I think everyone suffers from mum guilt, and I think it's a very common thing that you feel that you're a mum, you're a career person, and you're not actually really doing very well at either of them, because you're juggling. And I think that's very, very common. Mine was a very different one. Being mum to Mercy comes with a lot of challenges, and I don't think that I thought I was, but when I look back now, Jason, I probably wasn't giving myself 100% to my job, and I'm 110% person. So it was the right decision for us as a family.
With as you were trying to combine both, then how challenging was that mental health and well-being bit? Because it must have taken its toll, because as you say, you're trying to give 110% over here, but you've got these other challenges there. So how challenging was it, and how did you cope?
Obviously I did cope because I'm here talking to you, but I suffered PTSD back in 2014 after 6 IVF attempts and a miscarriage. So I think once you've had a mental health issue or PTSD, I think it always remains. I had a lot of something called EMDR, and that's something that I think maybe when you go forward, we could look at stuff professionally, because a lot of people have medical health insurance, and these things are for trauma and serious sort of mental health, and it worked with me. But I think I am always susceptible to taking things a bit harder than normal. So I did really suffer with it. But the trouble is, I have to keep strong for Mercy. How did I survive? Just getting through every day. I can't sit here and say to you, do this, do that, do this and that, because probably the biggest thing with me is my self-care has been low. I haven't looked after myself the way that I should. I tried to have a massage, but time with Mercy and everything, it just limits it, and that is an excuse. I should find time, but when you're in the hamster wheel, those are the things that don't give, because all I was concentrating on at Mercy, we have daily calls from school, and my personality, I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm a warrior. So that's not a good combination.
That overthinking is something we see with people who are struggling. And I've said in the past, I feel a bit of an imposter at times, Sarah, because I'm an optimistic, pragmatic bloke who hasn't really struggled with mental health over the years. There's been times where I've maybe turned to alcohol and had alcohol to excess, but I've not really had ever any kind of suicidal thoughts. And as I say, that imposter syndrome that I felt from time to time as I've tried to lead the crusade on this, I kind of have overcome pretty straightforwardly, because I'm surrounded by people who have shared their own circumstances, and I've been that confident because I must be an okay listener. And And that in itself, whilst it can be fulfilling as you're helping and listening, it also brings its own challenges. So what was that support network like, and how important was conversation to you, and where did the support actually come from to help you
Oh,
get
I
through?
mean, so if we started back in probably 2011, I'd had my first IVF and it had failed. And I previously had thyroid problems. So I'd had a partial removal of my thyroid glands, and it'd been going fine. But unfortunately, the IVF brought it back again. So we decided that we were going to have to go with donor IVF, which, was fine, still hard. But then because of the drugs for the IVF, it brought my thyroid back again. So I had to have a full removal of my thyroid, as well as trying to navigate what our next steps were. And if people who have had Graves' disease over thyroid, it's very, very mental health. People commit suicide with thyroid problems, your hormones, your emotions. So that was my first one. And I was working with Nationwide. And I had a fantastic boss, Andy Tilsley. And basically, I was off for 6 months. And he was just absolutely amazing. He would come around the house for me and Stuart, because I think we always have to remember the partner is the person that's suffering, because the person that's suffering it's all very visual. The person that lives with you, it's not so visual. And we know that men don't share as much as women do. So I had amazing support from my employer, occupational therapy. And the hardest thing for me through that mental health was not being able to go back to work. I felt like work to me was my normality. So the fact that I couldn't go back to work was making me even more upset and stressed. And occupational health, I always remember saying, I was like, can I come back? And they were, no, Sarah, you're not ready yet. And they said, we're actually finding it very difficult, because most people say they don't want to come back to work, and you're actually pleading with us to come back to work. And I think bringing in that is probably a saving grace in a lot of things. If you enjoy your job and you have a good network around you at work, I think that can be understanding. But what's really important to me, I think, and what I would say to anybody is, you have to be truthful and let your work know, because as much as you think that you are doing your job normally, you won't be, because nobody is capable of carrying that much anxiety, depression, and be able to do the job to their ability. And people need to understand that, you want to be at work. So it's really, really important to tell your boss the truth, I think.
Really brilliant point, that. And again, I think what we've seen over recent years, Sarah, we've seen different leaders and different stakeholders in the marketplace bravely come forward and share their personal stories around how poorly they've been. But what's evident is how well supported some of the senior stakeholders have been by their leadership teams or their bosses. So there's some green shoots there when it comes to this stigma that's associated with mental health. It does look like some progress is being made, but that honesty point you make there, that transparency and actually sharing. So it's not a sign of weakness, is it? It's, look, I'm not well, I need to get better, and it's really crucial. So it's a brilliant point.
But I do think, even when you are having that conversation and you're brave enough to have that conversation with your boss or whatever, you as a person are still feeling weak. You're sort of hating yourself that you have to have this conversation. I think I'm very good out in public. I think I always have a smile on my face. People think I'm mad, because I do have such a good sort of sense of humor. But a lot of the time, that has been a mask, and we all know, and dealing with Mercy and her mental health and the help she gets, masking is a really, really bad thing, because you're not dealing with the problem. And as you are not dealing with the problem, it's only going to come bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's unfortunately when suicide and self-harm happen.
And when, again, a really important point about this mask, because again, it's something that's appeared previously. These different masks worn dependent on circumstance, just as you're saying there. If you're a supervisor, if you're a leader, if you're a manager of people, how do you unravel and get underneath to see the true, the true self of that person?
It's really hard, isn't it? Because I did the mental health training, and that was one of the things. I mean, some of it, I did it with my colleague at the time, Sophie Burton, who now works in positive lending, and we had a very big conversation afterwards. And the thing is, how do you recognize when we were learning about it? There were some very difficult stories about suicide, but how do you recognize? It's quite funny, and bringing a bit of a humor into this, I've always had my cards read occasionally, and every single one of them has said to me that I have powers, that I could actually read people's cards. So I think I'm quite intuitive. So I know, I can spot the signs. I had an ex-boyfriend who had a mother, and I knew that she was secretly drinking even before he knew. I'm very, very good at picking things up, but some people might not be. So that's a difficult one. Maybe it's more about the companies they work for need to train these people more to be able to recognize the signs, and maybe have policies in place to recognize, because not everybody's the same, Jason. Some people don't relate to mental health. So if you had a team leader and there are still people out there that don't believe in mental health, and what if you had someone like that in charge? How are they going to recognize? So maybe it's something along, you train them, or maybe you have someone in that team that is a mental health trainer that can recognize those things and speak to them. But I think that's a really, really difficult one.
I think for the first time we had our first webinar with a mental health expert a couple of weeks ago, Katie from Altruist, and the focus she had around the importance of leaders being trained so they can spot changes in behavior, they can spot just whether somebody's that their appearance has changed, whether it's they've got slightly scruffier or they've got yellow eyes. It's just these telltale signs. And I think if I would think if you're a good leader, you've got a close relationship with your team, I think you can spot some of these some of these signs, but it's trickiest when people have got those masks up and they're trying to disguise and hide it.
I was going to say that. I mean, we all know that people that have alcohol addictions, they are easier to tell, because normally they're probably still drinking while they're doing things. They're alcohol dependent. So you might hear a slur, or their appearance does change. People that are very depressed might cry a lot. I mean, they are open signs. But then you have got those people that will talk about it as well. But you have got those people that are really good at masking it, and that's the dangerous part, isn't it? That how can you not call those people out, but how can you help those people before it's too late, really, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And I think good questions and caring and listening are really crucial. And I mentioned a moment ago about I suppose, recent progress and how leaders in the market have shone a light, and we've seen some brilliant support by companies. But rewinding to your own personal circumstance, it looks like nationwide we're doing this years ago, which is encouraging.
That was, so I had another, so that was 2011. But I don't know, Nationwide has something in place with the AT, but I really think it was down to my manager, and he was a man. You know, people would probably say, I bet you it was a woman. No, he was a man. And then again, in 2014, when I had the sixth IVF miscarriage and I had the PTSD, I was off for 6 months then again. And again, same, so supportive. Amazing. Yeah, so amazing. Supportive.
And you mentioned EMDR, which is it's an acronym I've not heard of before. Yeah. So what actually was that?
So in 2014, through my medical care, because of the PTSD and the trauma, I was referred to a trauma unit in Cheltenham. I was very lucky having medical insurance. Not everyone does, but it's a form of therapy through sort of, they can do it through eye movement or holding stuff. And what they're really, really dealing with is to get, so we've all got a filing cabinet in our head. And if we don't deal with something, if something isn't dealt with at the time and not filed away, what then happens with that always stays there. And when something else happens, that comes back, and it just makes it bigger, because it's not, it makes dealing with other stuff really difficult. So what they do by this holding this things in your hand or eye movement is they work through your trauma. So probably the first time, and what's really, really unbelievable is you'll find it wasn't the trauma of what you're actually dealing with at the time. It's the trauma of something that happened in your childhood, and this just comes out. And they bring this thing forward that you've never dealt with, which means that you are not dealing with everything else the best way.
That's amazing, isn't it? I've not heard of that. And again, I think, discovering stuff like that, we're learning as we do more of these conversations, which absolutely. Is amazing.
And I think the trouble with NHS, they usually put you through CBT, but CBDT or whatever it's called, it in a way is good, because you're in an office and your boss comes towards you and it doesn't acknowledge you. So as a person, our immediate thoughts is, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? Oh, I'm in trouble. So you sit at your laptop all day worrying about what you think you've done wrong. Your work's affected by it. But actually, he's just had a phone call from his wife to say his dog's died. And that's what CBT is all about. Because as a person, your first reaction is you've done something wrong. And that beats you up all day. So all these practices that are available, I think you have to personalize them to what works for you, because not one thing works for everybody. But I would always say, if you're having marriage problems, that causes a lot of depression and anxiety, always get in touch with the doctor. I know that going to the doctor isn't like it used to be. You can't even get an appointment, but ask for help. This is what everything's around. And then the thing that really hurts me, I mean, every woman will know, I'm absolutely mad about 24 hours in A&E and I'm on the ambulance. And the amount of stuff that those ambulance people go to is mental health these days.
Yeah. Well, look, and when we've only got to look at the statistics in our own sector. The survey that we do each year is really valuable, and we can temperature check, and we look at a few things, I suppose, that jump out this year, which, not surprising, a broker's working longer hours, still not getting enough sleep. That's that's just consistent every single year. Well, one thing that was a little bit of a surprise this year was was this more people working from home or having hybrid, and yet mental health had actually worsened over the last 12 months with the respondents?
No, I totally agree. Some people love working at home, but it's not for everybody. I'm one that doesn't, I do a bit at home. I only work 3 days a week now. So 2 I usually do at home, 1 I go out. And my God, do I need that day where I need to go out, have a drive in the car, talk to people, see them in person, have a cup of coffee, have a laugh, do business. I need that desperately. But not every office now gives those people that chance, because they've taken the offices and got rid of them due to COVID, etc. And also with brokers as well, a lot is done on Teams or over the phone. Gone are the days when you're sitting with 4 clients a day, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think that is a difficult one. And, maybe if we looked at this as an industry, we should maybe encourage brokers more to go to these organized events where they meet with other colleagues. And I think it's that thing again, isn't it? Being a broker is very reactive, and they've got to get that offer out. There's 10 people after one property, a dip's got to be done. 6 o'clock at night, a client says, if I don't have my dip at the estate agent at 9 o'clock at the morning. And the broker, I've worked with brokers for such a long time, and they care about their clients. I know it's their livelihood, but you get to know people and you care about your clients, and you don't want to lose the house. So they are burning the candle at both ends. So maybe it would be good to go and have an event where a coffee, and you speak to like-minded people. Okay, you're going to an event where you're going to learn from all the lenders, but take that time to sit at the table, have lunch with someone, talk about how awful it is that the rates are going up and down, and you don't know what's happening. But it's easy for me to say that because everyone will know that I'm a talker, but some people aren't. So, it's hard.
There's some green shoots around that. It was World Mental Health Day recently, and I attended the Mortgage Business Expo at London, and Pepper had got a stand where there was a barista and there was a breakout space for people to sit and relax. And I think what's around the corner at these events, just as you touch on there, are some wellbeing spaces where people can go and they can relax and they can chill and they can talk about lots of different things. Just before I move on, I just want to I suppose revisit this the support you had at a time that was really difficult for you, because I suppose what I'm interested in is what was clear was that you were getting, even back in 2011, 2012, 2013, you were getting some real strong support from Nationwide and your employer there. Not every person who's struggling is as fortunate as that. So what should they do? So if somebody is struggling, I know that be honest piece is really important, that honesty and transparency. But if they have got a boss who is just dismissive and not helping them, what should they do?
Well, that's really difficult, isn't it? Probably colleagues. Definitely colleagues. Maybe, and I mean, you can scrap this if you think I'm saying the wrong thing, but maybe if it is that desperate and that bad, you have to go maybe up to the next level, HR. Every firm has HR, but you need to tell somebody. Absolutely need to tell someone. And I know all bosses aren't as good as fortunate as the one I had at the time, but I had some really good colleagues as well. And I'm sure even if your boss is dismissive, you must have some colleagues, and maybe they can lead you to help you. In reality, for someone that doesn't want to talk, even if you just have one person that you can share, one person at the end of the phone, one person that will live with you, who will listen to you. But also, depending on what your problem is, you are going to have a lot of outside help as well. addictions. The person that's having an addiction, they have their own AA or VIA or anything like that. But I think what is really important, and what I'd like to see happening with you, Jason, is finding all the support people, groups to the people that are living with that, because there are lots of them, but they're not talked about. You know, someone wouldn't come up to me in an event and say, I'd say, how are you? And they go, oh, things are really terrible. I'm living with an addict. They just wouldn't, it, because they feel the shame as well. Or I'm living with somebody that's, my heart's broken because my wife's gone through 10 miscarriages. It's not something they're going to come and just talk to someone they don't know. But all these organised, and maybe that's how we can work with the larger companies, is getting these companies to know all about these support groups, putting them on their intranets, talking about them. I know it when I was at Vida. We had a woman come and talk, do a webinar on domestic violence to the staff, how to recognise it, what to do, not necessarily you being the person that's attached to it, but how you recognise it. So maybe more individually within firms, having people that are involved. And I think coming from someone that has suffered with regards with all the IVF, is people that have experienced it. You find all these counsellors that deal with depression, anxiety, addictions, they are actually someone that has suffered from this. And I think that is, if you could have 1 million people of those to speak to, it's amazing.
Again, really good point. I think we're still in an awareness phase. Although we've been going 3 years, we're still trying to grow the signatory numbers. And what's humbling is we're probably touching and reaching over 20,000 individuals now. We're nearly 160 plus. And I feel like we've not even got started, Sarah. You know, the points you've just raised there around moving from this awareness stage into how do we serve the needs of people who are struggling in the sector. That's got to be phase 2, but I still think we've not quite reached phase 1. I think starting with the session we had with Katie a few weeks ago is a start, and our first kind of foray into this serving the needs of others. But as I touched on, I think December and January having a real focus around self-care and encouraging people to look after themselves before they look after others is really, really important. And I think, how are you now? So again, you've obviously experienced a lot. And I suppose when we were talking there about the escalation that somebody needs to have, so be honest and escalate. And you know, what's clear is, even though you've had sympathetic support as you've gone through, you've reached a point where that family life and the work life, something's had, you know, grounds had to be given. And I suppose that's the ultimate, isn't it, in terms of if things still aren't working in that work environment and you've escalated it, and change needs to take place. But how are you now?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I still, I wouldn't say that I suffer from anxiety or depression anymore, but what I would say is I still have a lot of worry on a daily basis. With regards to Mercy, we have quite a difficult relationship. She's not very, I know she does love me, absolute 100%, but you know, I don't get much back. And I live with that, but see, I'm saying to you, speak to friends, and I'm probably the worst person that when things aren't going right in my life, I go insular. But what I'm really lucky is the friends that really know me know that you say about recognizing, know that characteristic about me, so they don't give up.
Right, that's important.
But you know, I think, like I said to you, once you've had an episode like I did at the PTSD and the stuff, never really leaves you. I think you're more sensitive. It's probably like if you've broken your leg and it's weaker, isn't it? If you fall down the stairs again, you're more likely to break it than you are than someone else that's fallen down the stairs for the first time. So I think sometimes when you've had a bad incident, it never is far away. And you know, and I worry very much that I never want to go back there again. But you saying recognizing, I think that it has taught me to recognize myself. So I know if I was going to struggle, the first person I would do is call the doctor.
Yeah. And I suppose as we've gone through the conversation there, there's been some really brilliant hints and tips that you've shared, and particularly that EMDR one, which is a new one for me. And what I mean, if there were to be for people who are listening, if there were to be maybe three main tips you would deliver, what would those three tips be? And I think if we look at for individuals who are maybe struggling as the first question, and the second question probably is around what should those you've got examples where the business supported you brilliantly, and what should those businesses be doing to support their people? So if we look at those individuals first, what are the three main tips and hints you would give them, and then the business?
The first one absolutely is never be alone. Never be alone. Even if something happens at the middle of the night, have that one person that you can go to, whether it's your mother, your friend. Always make sure that you try and have somebody, I would say, because if something goes wrong in the middle of the night is a very, very long time. And when you are in those, your mind is in that state, everything is going around in your mind. And if you've got 9 hours sat there on your own, everything can just go through your mind. Secondly, I'm not one for exercise. So dog walking, little thing like if you've got a dog, walk the dog. Coffees. I find going for a coffee really helps me. I love watching people. I love being around people. So even sitting in a coffee shop. So if you're at home, you're working, you're a broker, you feel just like everything is overwhelming, get out, go and have a coffee somewhere. Go to Waitrose, have a coffee. If you don't like have a coffee, have a cup of tea. Just get yourself away from the situation, because our brains are so complex and not for the better.
Yeah, it's this overthinking, isn't it, that you touched on? We're all guilty of it at times, and things are never as bad when we overthink. They're never as bad as we think, are they?
No, and at the end of the day, even if they are, Jason, we have to get through them. We have to face them. We have to get through them. And I've always been taught, never try and deal with it full on. Take little bite sizes. You can only do as much as you can. Employers, the one thing that I've seen really good, so I'm going to go to my IVF as an example, is when I took IVF, very supported after the IVF event, but there were no policies in place for having time off, anything like that. And we were going to Spain for treatment. And I will talk about this in case there are any employers living, and I would really ask them to reach out, because I know another problem with all the things that we want to do and talk, it costs, and not every company has the money. Perhaps they would like to do it. But recently there's a charity called Fertility Matters at Work. And they go into companies and they help them write new policies. So I think they've worked with the co-op, they've worked with a couple of large banks. So what they've now done is set it that the policy for people that get naturally pregnant is very much the same for people that are going through IVF. They get time off for appointments, if they have to travel. And that's really, really important, because when I was actually having my IVF, I kept it very secret. I took holiday because I didn't want to tell people we couldn't have time off for it. So I took holiday, and we all know holiday is our respite. We need a holiday. So I was using my holiday to go and have a really traumatic thing done a couple of times. So I had no holiday. So this charity is amazing. So if there is anybody in any large industry, I'd reach out to. It's been founded by 3 women that went through donor IVF, and they've experienced it all.
Amazing. Well, look, we'll make sure we're always looking for connecting subject matter experts and people who can just provide the right level of support to respondents or people who may be struggling. So I think we'll definitely make sure that we take the details and we'll get them loaded onto the MIMHC site.
And the only other thing I would say for companies that doesn't cost anything is maybe they could just do some research for the help that can be given to maybe the people that don't have the bigger voices, that are struggling in silence, that may be associated to the alcoholic or the gambler or the domestic violence. They really need help as well. So, and that's something that wouldn't cost any money. It would just be research. And I'm happy to help if you'd like me to do any work around that.
It's a good point, that, because again, I think what we see the person in front of us, and we'll try and provide the level of support, but the impact that's coming from the partner, or the impact that's coming from these different circumstances, we're looking directly at that person, but there's all kinds of things going on in the background,
and they're probably falling apart. And the one thing I haven't said, but when I decided to go part-time, I have so fallen into the right place. I work for an amazing guy called Mark Randall. He's a family man. He's got 3 children. And the one thing he always says is your health, your family come first.
Amazing.
So
Amazing.
if something bad happened, I wouldn't even think twice of picking up the phone to him.
Hey, listen, I think we're both experienced in this market. We've got the scars to show for that. But working with good people and finding good people as you go through that professional career, it's almost invaluable. It's worth more than 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand. It's that finding good people, and they're out there, aren't they?
Yeah, and another one I have to say, when I worked at Vida, I had problems with Mercy. It got me down, and Louisa Sedgwick, another fantastic person. I mean, there's more I could name, but they're the problem. And I've had some amazing colleagues that you take with you when you leave. Paula Priest, another person, we've talked about that as well. She's been my boss twice in my life, so supportive. And I think probably the reason I get so much support like that is I've been so open.
Yeah. Listen, I'm conscious of time.
Okay.
Really appreciate your honesty and
loads. I hope it's been okay.
lots of brilliant content. I promise you there. So just gonna summarise and
I just say,
to pick
sorry,
up on it.
Jason, could I just say one thing? I haven't done this lightly, because I'm putting myself out there, and some of me still feels really, really weak about it. But the reason I have done this is if I could help one more person to be able to help, it is. And it's really hard to, I've done this because I'm so passionate, but I still feel, oh my gosh, what am I doing? But I really, really want to help people. And I mean it when I say this. If there's anybody that wants to reach out to me, I really mean it, that I'm here.
Amazing. Look, I think that that importance that you place on being honest and self-care, so looking after yourself before you can look after those around you, and investing time so you can be that best version of yourself is great. I think recognizing that treatment and support is different because everybody's unique and bespoke. Recognizing that the impact of somebody maybe not being in a great place could be third parties close to them, and all kinds of events that are going on in that family unit are really important. And what's clear is that as you went through that IVF treatment, you've gone through that adoption and that parenting process. There's always, life it's like a heart monitor, isn't it? It is up and down. But this sector we operate in, it's a brilliant sector as we started with, and we've got some superb people around us, great colleagues you've mentioned there, which equips us to really continue with a brilliant future way of supporting our sector. We still need to attract young people into our sector. I think that that's a separate kind of issue, but I think if we can demonstrate effective leadership, we can see leaders, stakeholders who've been around for a while, but they're showing the vulnerabilities. It's a way of actually delivering that conversation and openness that we're striving for.
And actually, I just remembered something, and I should mention this. When I was going through my IVF journey, my brokers, I was a BDM. The support that I got from my brokers was amazing.
I bet. Look, I really appreciate your time, genuinely. Thank you for being so honest.
Really easy. You've made it really easy. You've been so lovely to talk to. So thank you very much.
Look, this is the start. So as I say, we've not got to first base yet. We've made loads of progress, but thanks to people like yourself stepping forward.
Such a good job. You should be very proud.
Thank you very much, and listen, have a great rest of the day, have a great rest of the week, and thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll certainly get that fertility contact details onto the site and share it with people. And I'm sure I'll take you up in terms of the support that you've offered to help us with.
All right, Jason.
All right, thanks, Sarah.
Bye.
All right.